Did it happen? Budanov pressured the Russian Federation at the negotiations. The Kremlin completely backed down. Russia is knocked out. Putin was forced to accept these conditions. They have no choice. The head of the president's office stunned the world with the details. The Russians openly admitted their powerlessness. And one more thing has been decided. Ukraine is taking back Donbas. Zelensky shattered Russia's dreams of new territories. Hysteria in Moscow and the capitulation of the Kremlin. Watch all the details of this historic breakthrough right now. My respects, this is Ukraine Today. I am Andriy Silikov. Let's discuss some good news. Budanov pressured the Russian Federation. The Kremlin is backing down. This is an absolute knockout for Moscow. The Ukrainian side literally steamrolled the Russian delegation. The head of the president's office, Kyrylo Budanov, shook the information space with a historic statement. Russia broke down on the main issue. The Kremlin obediently agreed to accept security guarantees for Ukraine from the United States.
At the previous negotiations, the Russian side, for example, directly stated that the security guarantees being offered to Ukraine by the United States of America, they will accept them, and, as they say, there's nothing they can do about it. Those being offered by the United States, they are saying directly, yes, we will be forced. We are ready to accept them for Ukraine.
The American shield. Putin has no choice. As Leska noted, the head of the president's office. You may not like the United States, but you can't help but respect them. Moscow was firmly put in its place, forced to play strictly by the rules of Kyiv and Washington.
These are our guarantees, and they will have to respect them. And what comes, as they say, from the United States, you may love them or not, but you won't be able not to respect them. And they said this directly. That's why, when it comes to security guarantees, I also see certain progress.
But that's not all. In the military subgroup, our delegation squeezed the maximum out of the enemy. According to Budanov, it is there that colossal progress has been achieved. There is already a clear decision on how strict monitoring of the demilitarized zone will work after the war ends. All opportunities for new aggression are being cut off from Putin's army. Their army is exhausted and no longer even dreams of advancing on Kyiv.
As for the issue of territories, we are seeking a compromise between two absolutely polar positions. We haven't fully found it yet. I hope we will find it. We don't have much time for this. Details. According to him, at the moment the state of the Russian army will not allow it to attack Kyiv.
Kyrylo Budanov dealt another humiliating blow to the occupiers with one more fact. Russia's much-vaunted winter offensive turned out to be a complete failure. Budanov openly stated their powerlessness. The territorial gains of the Russian army turned out to be the smallest in the entire history of their campaign against Ukraine. The only thing Putin's terrorists managed to do was to cowardly strike at the energy sector, trying to freeze and break our society. But the Kremlin's plan collapsed spectacularly.
Arguably, it is the smallest compared to all other periods of all offensive campaigns against Ukraine that they have conducted.
Budanov puts an end to Putin's dreams. No territorial concessions. The head of the president's office made this clear in no uncertain terms. The Ukrainian people will not give up their land, and all temporarily occupied territories will inevitably and decisively be liberated. It's naive to think that the Kremlin's appetite is limited to just a couple of regions. Putin still wants to swallow all of Ukraine. But after 12 years of war, the pseudo-empire has not managed to fully capture a single region.
Territory is the main issue. Everything else is secondary. I am confident that the Ukrainian people will reject any schemes regarding our land. All occupied territories will remain temporarily occupied and will inevitably be liberated over time.
Volodymyr Zelensky holds the exact same position. The president also puts a firm end to the territorial issue. Kyiv will not give up its land. This is not just a red line, it is a steel frontier of our defense. Zelensky also made it clear, to give up Donbas would mean condemning 200,000 Ukrainians to death, imprisonment, and forced conscription into Putin's army.
If we leave this territory, as you said, for example, from Kramatorsk or Sloviansk, at that very moment, the 200,000 people who are there now will find themselves under Russian occupation. Who told the Russians that these people are ready to become Russian citizens? And if not, will they be killed, sent to the front, or thrown into prison? They have already done the same thing in Luhansk, in Donetsk, in Crimea.
While Budanov and Zelensky are hitting the enemy with hard facts, our soldiers are breaking through the occupiers' positions on the battlefield. There is positive news from the southern front. Ukrainian fighters have driven a deep wedge into the Russian defenses on the border of the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. The armed forces of Ukraine have already liberated 8 settlements and reclaimed 400 square kilometers. The enemy's Vostok group is being thrown out of our land in panic. Although the occupiers are trying to bring in reserves, our offensive is already breaking through their front.
Let's put it this way. We're talking about both the gray zone and the settlements where control has been restored. This also includes the clearing operations carried out where the enemy only tried to infiltrate.
The southern front is on fire. The armed forces of Ukraine are tearing through the occupiers' defenses right now. While our command maintains an iron silence, fantastic news of a crushing counteroffensive is already breaking through from the front line. Right at this moment, Ukrainian titans are burning Putin's army and reclaiming our land. We are concealing all the details in the report.
The Ukrainian counteroffensive does not stop for a moment. That very Zaporizhzhia region continues to bring good news. In particular, this time the fighters of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, HURMO, distinguished themselves. According to our intelligence officers, the fighters of the Artan unit recaptured key positions near Stepnohirsk in the Zaporizhzhia region. A series of successful offensive actions were carried out by the special forces of the main intelligence directorate.
The effectiveness of the offensive actions near Stepnohirsk was due to the high level of coordination among the forces involved. The assault groups operate with the support of heavy strike UAV crews, artillery, and other means of firepower.
The fighters have significantly improved the tactical situation in this sector of the front and have also destroyed the advanced assault groups of the Russian army. We are talking about dozens of occupiers. At the same time, strikes on the enemy's logistics and communication hubs made their operations impossible. There are further assaults in this direction.
Air assault units were also involved here, including units of the Russian airborne forces. And today we see that thanks to the efforts of our assault units, our main intelligence directorate units, in particular the special unit Artan, they managed to neutralize these enemy advances, significantly improve our tactical positions, and accordingly prevent the Russians from reaching the high ground.
Analysts note that these results are also due to the fact that the Russians have not been able to recover after being disconnected. They lost their Starlink terminals. Despite attempts to restore satellite communications, they have not been able to reach previous levels. They lack sufficient intelligence data. Operational command of frontline units has been disrupted, and the accuracy of their strikes has dropped significantly. Partly because of this, assault troops are constantly running into Ukrainian ambushes.
The tactic of infiltrating with small groups has failed. And not because Ukrainian soldiers used kamikaze drones in Kyiv, and certainly not because they encountered the enemy with conventional small arms fire. It was a ground-based robotic system armed with a machine gun. It gunned down the Russian occupiers. They didn't stand a chance.
For security reasons, the exact location where this happened is not being disclosed. All that is known is that the defenders from the 32nd Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces were involved. And there will only be more such operations. It seems that Europe has decided to make a serious investment in offensive weapons for Ukraine. It is already known that France and Norway will finance the transfer of aviation munitions and surveillance systems to us, for a total of about $460 million. The weapons will be supplied from the warehouses of the French army, which will allow Ukraine to build on the success of its offensive in the coming months.
This offensive is important not because of the amount of liberated land, but because the Ukrainian army is stabilizing the situation in the south and pushing Russian forces back.
At the same time, analysts note that today's successes of the Ukrainian armed forces are, among other things, the result of reforms carried out within the defense forces. The transition to a core system has effectively allowed command decisions to be made on the ground rather than waiting for approval from the center. This also applies to decisions regarding strikes against the enemy, which has significantly reduced both the time needed to approve operations and increased the effectiveness of our attacks.
Drones from the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces struck the area where the Bastion missile division is located in Crimea. This is a coastal missile system that was originally designed as an anti-ship weapon. However, its Onyx missiles are being used to strike Ukrainian cities and the ports of Odessa. Drones also struck an ammunition depot near the village of Nizhnyaya Krinka and a logistics warehouse in the area of Velikaya Novoselka. All of this is in the Donetsk region.
As for the Ukrainian counteroffensive itself, the command reports that it is already disrupting the Kremlin's plans for 2026. To support the retreating forces from Zaporizhzhia, Russia is transferring reserves that it had kept for the spring and summer of this year. However, the only result this brings is an increase in losses among...
Regarding the invading forces of the occupiers, today the enemy will most likely be forced to completely re-evaluate and change its strategic plans. This is because they have been decisively repelled and pushed back from the specific forward positions where they had previously tried to establish a permanent foothold and entrench themselves for the long term.
The General Staff also notes that they report the situation at the front with a deliberate delay so as not to disrupt the operations of the defense forces. And since the rhetoric of our military has not changed, we can confidently say that the Ukrainian armed forces have clearly advanced further than has been officially stated.
And now the Russian rear is burning. Flamingo is at work. Russia's missile heart has been reduced to dust. Epic footage of the historic strike has been leaked online. Our newest FP5 missile scored a direct hit and destroyed the Votkinsk plant. This is the main facility where the occupiers were churning out their missile systems. How we are burning down Putin's military-industrial complex deep in the rear and permanently depriving the enemy of weapons. All the details of the destruction. Watch the full story in our report.
Poland has mobilized to defend itself against Russia. The operational command of the Polish armed forces reports that, in connection with another recent massive Russian attack on Ukrainian territory, Polish and Allied aircraft have begun operating in the country's airspace.
This concerns the possibility of airspace violations. Such incidents have been recorded multiple times. This is a violation of Polish airspace by Russia and by the Republic of Belarus.
The Polish side states that these measures are preventive in nature and are aimed at ensuring safety and protecting the airspace, especially in areas adjacent to zones of threat. And now this is already the Kursk region. Drone operators from Tashka drones of the 80th Separate Air Assault Brigade showed the results of striking a warehouse with equipment and drones. The enemy in the Kursk region. According to preliminary reports, about 10,000 FPV drones and 10 pieces of equipment were destroyed as a result of the strike.
A video has appeared online showing the moment a Ukrainian munition hit one of the Russian factories. Users note that this is an attack by a Ukrainian FP5 Flamingo missile on the Votkinsk plant, which produces missile systems for the occupier's army, in particular the Iskander-M, Topol-M missiles, and even the infamous Oreshnik. The Russians have more than doubled their activity over the past day, February 25th. The number of assaults in the Pokrovsk and Hulyapol directions has increased.
This concerns Kotlina, and accordingly, the occupiers are trying to break through in the Pokrovsk area. In addition, fighting has been recorded in the area of Hrishin and Novopavlivka. The occupiers are using a mixed tactic of both infiltration by assault groups and accordingly assaults by mechanized columns.
Deep state analysts have recorded enemy advances near Zakitne in the Kramatorsk district of Donetsk region.
Yes, Kramatorsk. From the forward positions of the Russian occupation forces, it is 16 kilometers to Sloviansk and 12 kilometers to Sloviansk. The distance to the Sloviansk TPP, which is a key facility of the energy system in the areas of Ukraine under control, is about 7 kilometers. They have essentially already accomplished their objective by reaching the point of establishing fire control over the locations of the Ukrainian defense forces. Moreover, I would like to note that at the same time, there is also pressure being applied in the direction of Kostiantynivka. There are extremely heavy battles taking place in Kostiantynivka itself, in the area of Stupochki and the Klebanbik reservoir. In other words, the occupiers have moved on to their strategic objective. This is the issue of capturing territory in Donetsk Oblast by military means, specifically the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration.
Viktor Orban is afraid of Ukraine. The Hungarian Prime Minister made a statement about an alleged Ukrainian threat to his country's energy system.
And all of this is happening precisely at the moment of actual preparations for the elections. In other words, by using anti-Ukrainian rhetoric, Orban is trying to boost his personal ratings.
In order, so to speak, to protect Hungary from certain actions that, in the politician's opinion, could happen in addition to the halt of Russian oil supplies through the pipeline. Druzhba. Orban ordered the military to be deployed to protect the infrastructure.
Meanwhile, the war is already crossing borders. Ukraine is burning out Putin's metastases in Belarus and Georgia. The Minsk dictator is finished. The opposition is preparing a tough overthrow of Lukashenko's regime. And Europe has cornered Moscow with a tough ultimatum. How is this would-be empire coming apart at the seams and losing its last footholds? All the answers are in our report.
While Russia tries to hold the front in Ukraine, the very geography of the war is beginning to change. Kyiv is becoming increasingly active in places where Moscow's influence was recently considered unshakable: Belarus, Transnistria, and Georgia.
Minimizing the influence of the Russian Federation beyond its borders is a security priority not only for Ukraine, but essentially for the entire civilized world, and above all for the European continent. That's why the goals of Ukraine, Europe, and the West as a whole are absolutely aligned. They are the same.
Belarus is getting drawn deeper into the war. It is from its territory that Russia launches drones at Ukrainian cities. However, according to Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine has already destroyed the facilities that controlled these drones. On the
territory of Belarus, modern relays for Shahed drones have appeared. According to him, these are used for targeting and coordinating strikes on Ukraine.
But it won't end there, as the dictators of these countries have signed a number of documents within the framework of the Union State. This is how Russia is slowly but surely devouring Belarus.
The current international situations against the backdrop of heightened tensions, especially on the western borders. It is vitally important for us to develop allied relations and strategic partnership between Belarus and Russia.
At the same time, resistance to the Lukashenko regime persists within Belarus itself. Holding new elections, constitutional reform, supporting Ukraine, and pursuing a European path of development, these are all goals of the Belarusian opposition.
Analyzing the capabilities of the Belarusian opposition, just as we analyze the capabilities of the Russian opposition. Both the first and the second are puppet-like, artificial, as if they exist, but in the totalitarian regimes of Lukashenko and Putin, they are undoubtedly just imitating some kind of activity.
A month ago, for the first time since 2020, there was a bilateral meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and the opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. But what does this mean?
This is good. Again, according to the latest comments from Tikhanovskaya herself, after this contact with the president of Ukraine, a connection was established. Some kind of horizontal contact was made with the Ukrainian special services, who began to actively communicate with representatives of the Belarusian opposition on a regular working basis, not just as a one-off. This is, again, in order to understand and gauge the mood inside Belarus itself.
Another potential point of change remains Transnistria. Weakened by economic and energy crises, the region has, for the first time in years, found itself under increased attention from Kyiv and its European allies.
For example, with weapons, military personnel, gas and electricity as well. Russia can't help them with any of this. We simply can't help them right now. Undoubtedly, this is causing negative sentiment within Transnistria itself. Undoubtedly, many people are starting to become seriously disillusioned with Putin's policies and the Russian Federation. Now, there is even a widespread and serious opinion in Transnistria that Putin has simply abandoned them.
At the same time, the European Union has issued an ultimatum to the Kremlin.
Russia has occupied many territories and its troops are deployed in various regions, whether in Georgia or Moldova. Therefore, yes, to achieve lasting peace, it must be clear that they need to withdraw their troops from all the occupied territories where they are currently present. Of course, some say that these demands are unrealistic. But let's be honest, the demands from Russia are completely unrealistic as well.
European initiatives are increasingly calling for the withdrawal of Russian troops not only from Ukraine but also from Transnistria and even Georgia. In fact, a new security system is being discussed.
The configuration right now for such an eye-opening experience for the residents of Transnistria, for the reality, is now as clear as ever.
But while Russia is isolated in Transnistria, in Georgia it still retains powerful direct military levers, in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, while at the same time keeping the rest of the country in a state of high economic dependence.
Russia's influence in Georgia is no longer as straightforward or easily defined as it once was in the past. especially back when such massive infrastructure and strategic development initiatives were not being actively implemented. This includes major new economic and logistical projects currently being driven by major international global powers. Now, it appears that Georgia could potentially become something like, let's say, a stable and cooperative neutral zone for the region. And this shift marks a significant turning point.
Of course, the people of Georgia themselves are not satisfied with this. I
am here for a very simple reason: to protect my country's European future and democracy. We participated in the elections and they were clearly falsified. And up to now, we have done everything in our power to show that we want a European future.
We do not want to be part of Russia, we want to be part of Europe, and we belong to Europe.
The war continues not only on the battlefield. Today, the confrontation between Russia and the West is becoming increasingly evident beyond Ukraine as well, in countries where the future security of the entire region is being decided.
And what do you think about these events? Share your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video. Stay with us because it only gets more interesting from here.